Chief Medical Officer Kade woke from dead sleep with a scream locked in her throat. As the nutrient filaments detached from her back, she fell to the deck in a boneless heap. Legs threatening to buckle, she stood and rubbed at her aching shoulder, taking in the dark, silent sleep bay. Something was horribly wrong with the Sojourn. The ship had redundant, self-replicating power systems. For it to go full black, something catastrophic must have taken place. She looked at the other sleep pods. They stood empty and derelict. She ran a finger over the transparent bubble of her own, and it came away with a thick coating of dust.
Navigation,
Kade croaked through desiccated vocal cords. The air stung to breathe, mildly caustic, as though it had been filled with riot gas that had only partially dissipated. She cleared her throat and tried again.
Navigation.
The holographic display did not appear.
systems are fucked.
She thought. The dim red safety lights that ran the circumference of the bay's walls provided little illumination, but let Kade know that at least emergency power had held out. She staggered to the viewing port in the bay's starboard wall and placed her hand on the manual release. The polymetal slid up silently. What it revealed sent a wave of cold panic through Kade, and she had to reach out and grip the port's lip to keep from crumpling to the deck. On the other side of the barrier, where the Alpha Centauri system should have been, was nothing but impenetrable, aphotic black. Kade fell against the glass, hauling the bitter air into her lungs in gasps. None of this made any sense. The Sojourn was a research vessel and should have been in a slow orbit around Proxima Centauri. The crew awake and the VI First Mate adapting the ship for optimal living conditions in the new star system. A tear tumbled down Kade's cheek, and she wiped it away violently. Suddenly, a sickly crimson light burst through the viewing port. Kade gasped and fell back, shielding her eyes. Between her fingers, she saw red lightning fork across an oil-black sky, illuminating a terrain of impossible geometry, a wilderness of reflectionless mirrors apparently formed from dead black glass. The Sojourn rested in shattered fractals of the stuff. Kade turned and placed her back to the port, sliding to the floor and hugging her knees. Her heart pounded in her chest, and her fingertips had gone cold.
I have to get it together,
Kade thought. The crew had trained for this, undergoing rigorous psychological conditioning to withstand a variety of disasters inherent to extrasolar travel. She pinched her nose and performed the Valsalva maneuver. As the echo of her forceful exhalation faded, another sound floated into the sleep bay. Kade's head jerked up, and she sat, statue still and breathless. After a moment, the sound came again, a low, keening wail. A human voice. Kade bolted to her feet and began to rush for the door. She only made 3 steps before her legs failed her, still weak and out of sync from the dead sleep. She went sprawling. A second voice joined the first, then a third. Soon, the air was full of voices, discordant and agonized. Kade pushed herself gingerly to her feet and walked carefully to the bay door. It slid away, slowly and soundlessly, emergency power only sparing a sip of juice for the function. Out in the passageway, the voices were more clear. Kade thought she recognized some. They came from the direction of the bridge. Maybe the infirmary had been damaged in the landing, and an improvised one had been established there to treat crewmates who had been injured in the crash. Crewmates who needed their chief medic. Kade picked up speed toward the sound, shuffling along as fast as her traitorous legs would allow. As she rounded a bend in the passageway, she saw that the door to the bridge was partly open, bent and off its track at the wrong angle. Red emergency light spilled through the aperture. As Kade approached, the voices went silent as one. The quiet their absence left was a living thing, a thing that repelled every cell in Kade's body. She turned to leave, taking 2 steps before stopping. Her face screwed up into a snarl, equal parts fear and determination. She turned back and strode to the door. When Kade reached the bridge, she saw the crew, and her bladder let go. They were all here, and they'd all been remade. Red meat glistened in the emergency lighting, used as mortar around beams of femur and spine, ribs and radii, a frame of bone. 100 bloody legs supported an enormous, misshapen sphere that pulsated with profane industry. The main body of this new machine was a hell of torsos and arms, organs and faces, all grossly out of place. As she watched, her mind fragmenting, madness pulling her person to pieces. The head of Captain Martinez roiled out of this blasphemous, churning flesh. It stood at the end of a muscular arm. The eyes rolled toward Kade, and Martinez seemed to mouth the word, "Run." But Cade's feet were roots deep in the soil of this moment. As Kade watched, 50 different mouths began to wail, one after the other, every eye begging her for mercy that she could not give. The agonized moaning rose to a crescendo, and near the base of the amalgam, a pudendal orifice irised open. Something black and featureless fell to the floor in a gout of red and yellow, and began to wriggle weakly. The voices fell silent again. Something stepped from behind the birth machine, an infernal parody of humanity, pale, tall, and wholly incoherent in movement and form. The thing bent and picked up the black tube, holding it toward Kade like an offering, its eyeless face pinning her in its regard. The tube flexed and twisted in misshapen hands, and as Kade felt herself begin to come apart, the scream that had been waiting for release finally came, and did not stop for a long time. Thank you for listening to Sojourn. This piece of original fiction and all associated visuals were written, created, recorded, and produced by the House of Everlasting Shadow. If you like what you heard, please consider following the House of Everlasting Shadow on every platform where you enjoy content. Until next time, traveler, bear witness.